Hi everybody, Patrick Duggan here from MAV Consultancy. I just want to talk about the Panorama Programme that showed on the BBC on Wednesday the 22nd of May, which filmed the undercover practice of a hospital in Durham and showed staff abusing patients, using restraint as I saw it, as inappropriately. I don't particularly want to talk about the abuse because that was evident to see that it appeared to be a sort of a bullying macho culture that didn't seem to respect the patients as human beings. But I wanted to talk more about the restraint. So why MAV Consultancy? Well, when I started in this training 20 odd years ago, the approach used to be, as a deliverer of physical intervention training, the approach seemed to be to take people to the ground as a matter of course. Things have rapidly changed over the last number of years, and it's very much about sort of prevention in a sense, and getting to know your service users, getting to understand what their anger triggers are, what's upsetting them. It's about problem solving and helping people to manage the triggers that they experience. This is why I call my business Managing Aggression and Violence, because it's my deeply held belief that if you can manage a person's anger and aggression, then you can hopefully prevent the violence. The NHS and guidance such as positive and proactive care reducing the need for restrictive intervention seems to echo this strongly, and the NHS seems to call it PMVA. PMVA just stands for Prevention and Management of Violence and Aggression, so if you can prevent it, that's the best thing to do. But if you have to manage it, you have to manage it. What we saw in Walton Hall, to me, was an inappropriate use of restraint and a lot of goading patients, so we all know that's for the wrong reasons. But we often saw people being taken straight to the back as a first call, and I think, well, if a system or the people that are operating, and doing the training are only selecting that aspect of the course, taking people backwards to the ground, there's very little opportunity for service users to calm down, to de-escalate. It's, in other words, the staff are escalating the situations. Don't get me wrong, there might be times where people have to be taken to the ground, but that's for the right reasons. That's for safety of the patient themselves and safety for the staff in extremely violent situations. The guidance these days talks about, as I said, verbal de-escalation. It talks about restraint being an absolute last resort when all verbal skills, talking, persuasion, negotiation, have failed, or in high-risk situations where to not intervene would be unsafe, to patients and staff. But as I say, what we saw in the video on the television programme was proactive sort of restraint to reinforce the sort of regime, rather than reacting and managing a particular situation. So going back to the point of restraint and taking people backwards, I don't think there's any chance of people calming readily in that sort of situation. On all my courses, I always teach, if you're laying hands on a person, if you have to lay hands on a person to keep them safe, then it's about trying to think of a plan, an end game of how you want to end this as soon as possible, how you want to restore calm, how you want to develop the sort of relationships again and move on from that incident and learn from it. So I always advocate taking people to chairs, because at least if you can take people to chairs, you've got an opportunity to talk to them, possibly calm them down, offer them a cup of tea, a drink, that type of thing, and find out what the problem is. I really advocate sort of chair restraint. The modern guidance talks very much about avoiding the floor at all costs, and I think chair restraint and using modern equipment like the safety pod, where people can be sat in it, eradicates the need for going to the floor. Of course, there'll always be exceptions, and within this we've got to think of the safety of the staff as well as the patient. So with a programme like this, it's there's a temptation to focus on the abuse that happened solely to the patients, and that should be seen as it is. It's abuse, it's about a culture, it's not necessarily about physical intervention as such. So physical intervention really should be an absolute last resort. It should be just part of the toolkit that staff have to manage violent and aggressive patients. But that comes long after, talking, negotiating, understanding the trigger points, listening to people, empathising with them, asking questions, trying to find out what the problems are, repeating those problems back to them so that they get a greater understanding and staff get a greater understanding of what the issues are, and seeking solutions. Now, if any of you are interested in safe, managing aggression and violence training, PMVA training, I run regular courses in Leeds at a martial arts venue that's soft and padded and that sort of thing, and I'm also happy to come out to services. The business is called Managing Aggression and Violence Consultancy Limited. I'm from a nursing background, long years working with mental health and learning disability, and I think that adds a sort of an element of credibility. So if you want to get in touch, I'd welcome any calls from you. Thank you very much then. Bye bye.